Despite the many cameras that watch the storefronts, the malls, parking lots, and residential houses, most mysteries remain unsolved. The disappeared who were last spotted on CCTV, and stalkers who creep up on their victims all fade into the white noise, leaving behind enduring enigmas. Number 5. It was the 17th of February when 24-year-old Marilyn Bergeron opted to embark on a long walk away from her family home in Quebec, Canada. Little did anyone know at the time that a simple walk would change her life and the lives of her family forever. It was a crisp morning. The air was sharp, which prompted the young woman to put on her warm black coat and a pair of sturdy boots. Marilyn stepped out of the family home with a small backpack strapped onto her back. She didn't take much with her, leaving behind her purse and phone. This decision would later be viewed as incredibly odd. The only thing that she had taken along with her on her journey was a single credit card, perhaps indicating that she'd be spending the day outside. But as she stepped out the door at 11 a.m., Marilyn would leave only questions in her wake, questions that would only grow in the minds of those who knew her. As the hours passed and the sun began to disappear, the Bergeron family felt a rise in concern over the absence. They knew that Marilyn enjoyed these walks, especially in nature where she would often find peace. This trip, though, was bound to take on an alarming tone as time slipped on without her return. What was meant to be a simple walk turned into a desperate search. Relatives gathered and decided to search the local area in hopes that they may bump into Marilyn on a return trip home, wandering down the familiar paths. As sundown drew in, the family gathered anxiously, and then panic set in. Phone calls and searches in the immediate area proved fruitless. The relatives were left with no other choice but to accept defeat and report Marilyn missing to the authorities. Law enforcement was quick in their response and immediately took to the case and tried to piece Marilyn's movements together. They retraced her last steps and scoured every lead they found. Speculation began to arise in the minds of everyone involved. They wondered if she'd run away to start a new life, or if something much more sinister had taken place. Had she been abducted? As fear swirled in the community, it became clear that finding a witness was crucial. The first significant lead, though, didn't come in the form of a person, but rather a security camera at a nearby ATM. Investigators reviewed the footage and found a chilling breakthrough. It showed Marilyn attempting to withdraw money, but her body language was tense. The footage confirmed that 5 hours after leaving her home, the young woman had arrived at a coffee shop where she used that same credit card to buy a coffee. Finally, the team had a lead. Many had passed through the coffee shop that day, and the ATM was bustling. Witnesses therefore were plentiful, and investigators began identifying them. Interviews were conducted in an effort to piece together Marilyn's last movements. During their inquiries, though, police would learn that the woman was visibly nervous, skittish, and constantly looking over her shoulder, as though she was being watched. Witnesses felt as though Marilyn was being followed, but no one reported seeing anything out of the ordinary. At the cafe, 12 miles from her parents' house, officers spoke to the barista who served her. She alleged that Marilyn really wanted to leave the store and had a notable somber demeanor. The new information, though, brought no breakthrough, but only deepened an already confusing mystery. Police wondered why she'd been looking over her shoulder and who could have been following her. Her subsequent movements after this remained unknown, and police couldn't figure out where she may have gone. After this day, Marilyn's credit card hasn't been used again. An agonizing 2 years went by without any developments in the case until another witness came forward. In January of 2010, Guy Salico and his wife were fast asleep in Hawkesbury, Ontario, where they heard the doorbell ring. It was a cold December evening, 2 a.m., when Salico opened the door. There stood Marilyn Bergeron. It was raining outside, and the woman was dressed in a thin shirt, high heels, and a leather jacket. By this time, it seemed as though Marilyn changed her hair to blonde instead of the brunette showcased in all of the pictures of her in the media. Despite this detail, the couple were adamant that this was the missing woman. The couple gave her a towel so she could dry off, and she asked to use their phone. Unfortunately, Marilyn never got a hold of anyone, and she wandered back into the dark of night, even though Salico had offered her a lift. Unfortunately, the homeowner had no idea who she was and only learned of the disappearance 3 months later. Salico, though, had already seen her during those 2 years. He'd seen her with the man whom Marilyn was supposedly in a relationship with. Investigators were still involved in the case and decided to dig deeper, and they discovered that other locals in Hawkesbury had also seen her. This new information was incredible, and new hope was instilled in the case. Family and detectives hoped that other Ontario individuals could come forward with information. 20 more credible tips were found around the same time as Salico's claim. To learn that Marilyn was still alive a year and a half after her disappearance was nothing short of remarkable. Downtown, at a local restaurant, officers showed diners a picture of the missing woman, and all of them had seen Marilyn at that very restaurant, having a meal with her partner. This new lead, of course, piqued the interest of the Bergeron family, but police involvement by this time began to dwindle. There was also talk of an incident in Montreal, where the family believed there may be many answers to be found. Marilyn had friends in the area who could have some useful information, but now the police were treating the case as a voluntary disappearance. The years trotted on with more reports coming in of potential sightings of the missing woman, but her whereabouts remained unknown to her family, who were desperate for answers. During the 2010s, they continuously made requests to the MPS to have the case transferred to the SQ or Montreal Police, with the SQ having province-wide jurisdictions, and the Montreal Police having the reputation as the most capable agency in Quebec. But the pleas were rejected each time, prompting an appeal to the minister. In 2015, a meeting was held during which the family expressed their sadness and demanded that the case be looked at again, but this was refused once more. In 2017, new hope was breathed into the case of Marilyn's disappearance. It was that year that local authorities had set up a dedicated tip line, inviting anyone with any information, insight, or tips to come forward. This initiative sparked interest in the case and led to more tips coming in. The tip line would receive more than 40 sightings of Marilyn, each of which was investigated by police, but all of these leads ended nowhere, leaving investigators and family disheartened. As time went on, the headlines concerning Marilyn's case disappeared from the public consciousness. The family began to consider the idea that she may have started a new life elsewhere, but they couldn't shake the question of her safety from their minds. As media coverage shifted focus, unresolved questions remained. What really happened to this young woman that day? Did she leave her life behind and start anew, or was she forced into the abyss? To this day, the mystery and uncertainty remain. Many wonder what happened to Marilyn, and more importantly, why. The disappearance has gained notoriety over the years, but the woman remains missing. Marilyn has been described as a Caucasian female who stood at a height of 5 foot 7 inches tall and weighed around 115 pounds. At the time of her disappearance, she had brown hair at shoulder length and green eyes. Both of her ears and belly button are pierced. She's known to have a Pegasus and unicorn tattoo on the left side of her chest. As she walked away from her home, she was wearing gray pants, a black hooded jacket with a fake fur lining, black boots, sunglasses, and a necklace. Information can be directed to the California Department of Justice, who can be reached at 916-210-3119. Number 4. It was the evening of December 1st, 2022, when 58-year-old Mark Lovell was discovered deceased in his car that stood outside his Newry home. Several wounds were found on his body, indicating that he'd been fired upon at close range. Lovell, father of 3, was known to the police service of Northern Ireland before the homicide. The event took place around 6:30 that evening, after Lovell returned from visiting and caring for his sick mother. It's believed that in the hours before, the victim was being stalked, his assailants lying in wait. There was no doubt in the minds of law enforcement that this was a calculated attack, with Lovell as the target that exploited his devotion to his mother, whom he would visit daily. CCTV footage only confirmed such suspicions when it revealed the possible assassins following Lovell right up to the point of the homicide. Eerily, in the footage, one can see a black C-Class Mercedes making its way into an intersection before turning down Chapel Road. It immediately turns left into the parking lot, almost out of view. Just moments later, Lovell's black Volkswagen Golf enters the intersection, heading in the direction of Newry, away from May. The potential assassin can then be seen turning around and heading back toward the same crossroad, heading in the direction of Fort Hill. The car bore a false Northern Ireland registration plate, which was not identifiable in the security camera footage. The Mercedes was later found to be a stolen vehicle, which was reported in Dublin back in July of that same year. On his journey home, Lovell would stop at Newry city centre, giving his assassins ample time to reach his home before he did. When he eventually makes it home, police believe that the person or persons who took his life were already there waiting. Later, the Mercedes was discovered in the Dundalk area across the border in the Irish Republic. It was burnt out. Detective Chief Inspector Kelly revealed that the police department is in search of anyone who has information on this current unsolved crime. The assassins chose to follow their victim during a time when people were still out and about. Some may have been doing some Christmas shopping or heading home from work. Someone saw something, or at least their dash cams did. Inspector Kelly also reminds the public of the £20,000 reward from Crime Stoppers that leads to the arrest and conviction of the criminal. But it's speculated that the incident may be a cross-border criminal gang feud, making many potential witnesses reluctant to speak out. It's assured, though, that any information given to Crime Stoppers will be completely anonymous, and they can be reached at 0800-555-111. Crime Stoppers does not trace IP addresses, telephone calls are not recorded, and no caller line is displayed. 4 people, aged 28, 34, 45, and 40 years old, were previously arrested during the investigation, but were released shortly after. Later, a 42-year-old woman and a 49-year-old man were also detained, but the two were released. To date, 6 people have been arrested and questioned for the attack, but no charges have been filed. Aileen Hughes, Lovell's wife, spoke out on the first anniversary of her husband's senseless and brutal homicide. She explained that he was an only child and the only one who was dedicating so much of his time to his elderly mother. Since the incident, his mother's been in the hospital, nursing a broken heart. Lovell was a loving son, a father, a grandfather, and a husband. To those who knew him, he was also a great friend. Aileen recalls how he enjoyed a quiet drink and looked forward to concerts. As the years have trotted on, no new leads, clues, or tips have come about. The homicide of Mark Lovell remains an enduring mystery. Number 3. Brandy Wells graduated from Chapel Hill High School, where she'd been a member of the school band and flag team. She was incredibly talented, which landed her a college scholarship to the University of Texas. During her freshman year, Brandy fell head over heels for a boy whom she married at the age of 19. As she continued her studies, though, she soon found that trying to juggle home and college life was incredibly difficult. So she dropped out after finishing her sophomore year, promising herself to return to her studies with the newfound dream of becoming a teacher. Unfortunately, that love-filled marriage ended in divorce, and she moved to San Antonio. This life change placed her dreams on hold until she returned to East Texas. She was now 23 years old and was finally getting her life back on track. Brandy enrolled at the Trinity Valley Community College, but was nervous about returning since she was a few years older than most of her classmates. But joining a band again encouraged her to pursue her dreams, and she looked forward to the start of band camp. In 2006, Brandy would suddenly find herself grappling with financial issues, forcing her to rethink some options. She contemplated selling some jewelry at a pawn shop, but opted rather to find stable employment. That year, she landed a job at a local Walmart, a position that brought her some relief. On the 2nd of August of that year, Brandy headed to her mother's house. Ellen Tant was shocked to see her daughter, but was excited nonetheless. The summer break was coming to a close, and the fall semester was around the corner. Brandy wanted to enjoy her last few nights before diving back into her studies. The plan for that evening was to head out on a lively night out with her younger sister. But when she arrived home, she discovered that her sister was sick and was already in bed. While slightly disappointed by this, Brandy decided to head out for some fun by herself. She headed to the bathroom and began getting ready, searching for the perfect outfit. She'd settled for a floral printed top with rust-colored pants. Brandy carefully applied her makeup and finally, completing her look, a pair of heeled sandals. As she emerged from the bathroom, Ellen complimented her outfit, stating that she looked incredible. Brandy headed for the door, nervous but excited. The vehicle that the young woman was driving, a 2000 Pontiac Grand Prix, was running low on gas, so she asked her mother if she could borrow her car. Ellen, though, didn't have much gas in her car either, so Brandy left with the Pontiac. It took her quite a while to arrive at the club, but on the way she made a few stops. At first, she stopped off at a bowling alley where her friend Jeanette Green was bartending that evening. Brandy approached the bar, spotting her friend standing behind the counter. She ordered a drink and told Jeanette to place it on her mom's tab. She did so, knowing that Ellen was covering a spontaneous night out. Brandy began sipping at her drink as she began sharing her night's plan with Jeanette. She explained that she'd be heading on to a club in Longview. Despite her clear excitement, there was still a sense of anxiety given the unfamiliarity of the area. Brandy's friend was just as concerned and warned her to be careful, alluding to the idea that Longview could be dangerous, especially for someone who didn't know their way around. But the college student waved this warning away, convinced that she'd be perfectly fine. She assured Jeanette that she could handle it and made her way to the door, only finishing half of her beverage. As she climbed back into the low-on-gas car, Brandy felt excited, but little did she know that this innocent night out would spiral into an enduring mystery, a mystery that left many searching for answers. As she headed down dark and winding roads, Brandy soon discovered that she had no idea where she was going and began phoning the club for directions. It's believed that she made at least one wrong turn that evening. Eventually, she arrived at Graham Central Station at 10:30 p.m. Ellen was led to believe that her daughter would be meeting up with friends who would accompany her on the night. This, though, didn't appear to be the case. Brandy had asked both her sister and godmother Michelle to come with her for a sense of familiarity and comfort, but none of her other friends were aware of the plans. The college student began readying herself to enter a club that she'd never been in before. She was clearly apprehensive, though, in this unknown nightclub in an unknown area. The crowd was full of socializing strangers, and she didn't know a single person there, but still, she danced. Ellen awoke that Thursday morning to find her daughter hadn't returned, but she wasn't concerned just yet. She thought that perhaps Brandy had stayed with a friend for the night, and she wasn't required to update her mother on her every move and overnight plans. As time pressed on, though, Ellen grew more and more concerned and began phoning her daughter. Frantic voice messages went unlistened to and left without reply. On Friday, there was still no sign or word from Brandy, and panic began to set in. After more calls and more unresponsiveness, Ellen reported her daughter missing. She called the Tyler Police Department, who sent an officer to the house to fill out a missing person report. By this time, she was still under the impression that Brandy had gone to a nightclub called the Electric Cowboy, only to later be corrected and informed that she'd actually made plans to go to Graham Central Station. Brandy's godmother and Ellen decided to take a drive, thinking that the woman may have run into car trouble during her trip, especially since she mentioned the low gas earlier that evening. The Longview Police Department didn't seem too concerned about the disappearance and opted not to search for someone who likely headed off voluntarily. The family, though, wasn't convinced that she was a runaway. Despite their reluctance to handle the case, the police lightly brushed on the disappearance. During the investigation, CCTV emerged from Grand Central Station. Brandy was spotted entering a club by herself that evening and was seen again at 12:30, leaving alone. The video also revealed potential witnesses and potential suspects, including a man in a white cowboy hat. That man would later be cleared of any involvement. Others at the club would also be questioned, and they reported having seen Brandy, claiming that she appeared to be mostly sober throughout the night. As Michelle and Ellen continued their search for any sign of the missing woman, they searched the parking lots for the Pontiac but found nothing. It would later be discovered that the car had actually been found prior to the disappearance being reported. A Texas Department of Public Safety trooper had happened upon the abandoned vehicle parked on the side of Interstate 20 outside of Longview. After running the number plate, he discovered that it wasn't connected to any crime or missing person, so he stamped it as abandoned and it was set to be towed. Unfortunately, Brandy hadn't been reported missing as of yet when the car was found. Inside was a purse, a wallet, cell phone, and a napkin with a man's number on it. The driver's seat had also been pushed all the way back, which would certainly accommodate a tall driver, but Brandy was only 4'11". It would take days before law enforcement finally made the connection between the car and the missing woman. In the trunk, they also found a gas can that Ellen believed was not her daughter's. This suggested that the missing woman had in fact run out of gas and may have asked for help. On the 8th of August, a search was conducted in the immediate area, but nothing was ever found. Detectives then decided to use the cell phone they discovered in the car and call each of the contact numbers in an effort to find out more about Brandy. Oddly, some of the contacts didn't even know who she was. This confused the authorities until they showed the item to Ellen, who explained this was actually her daughter's ex-partner's phone, who was now in the military. Brandy's cell phone, strangely, was not in the car at all, prompting concerns over whether or not she really disappeared of her own accord. During the entirety of the investigation, police only named one man as a person of interest, but no evidence ever tied him to the disappearance. To this day, no one knows what happened to 23-year-old Brandy Wells. Brandy is said to have dirty blonde hair and blue eyes. She was last seen in Longview, Texas at Graham Central Station. At the time, she weighed about 120 pounds and stood 4 foot 11 inches tall. Any information on the whereabouts of this missing woman can be directed to the Texas Department of Public Safety Missing Persons Clearinghouse at 800-346-3243. Number 2. In recent years, Spider-Man has been making appearances in England, but he's not taking on the expected heroic persona that fans know him for. Instead, the comic book character is actually being viewed as quite the menace for the town of Hailsham in East Sussex, located 68 miles from London. The mysterious figure that dons a Spider-Man outfit, including a mask and shoes, has taken to haunting the neighborhood and intimidating the locals. Eerily, the bizarre behavior seems to be solely directed at one particular property, only causing widespread distress. This unsettling series started years ago on the 13th of February 2004. That day, a Spider-Man figure approached the home of a family in Hailsham and left behind an ominous package. The contents of the package were never disclosed, but the act itself instilled fear in the household. Then in February of 2024, the assailant struck again, and this time it sparked off a chilling campaign with this particular household at the center of it. After 2 decades of silence, the subsequent incidents marked the return of the Spider-Man stalker, and the months-long ordeal reignited, leaving the residents on edge. With the rise in popularity of different security features, Ring doorbell cameras have been useful in such cases, allowing the homeowner to capture the masked menace on video. This new security feature, though, would not deter the stalker for long. On the 26th of August, in the early morning hours around 5:30, the footage captured the superhero, armed with a phone flashlight, stealthily approaching the home. He then placed 2 packages before the front door and retreated down the path. Aware that he was being filmed, the stalker paused and gave the camera an eerie wave, taunting the residents that he knew were watching. This bizarre behavior was a fan that fueled the fire of fear. Locals became even more unsettled at this reoccurring act. After this, though, it appeared that the homeowner went undisturbed, believing that the 26th of August was the last of the mysterious entity. But on the 29th of December, the residents' hair stood up on the back of their necks once more. The assailant had come back. This time, it appears as though his face was hidden behind a white mask with headphones. This change in disguise only added to the already creepy event. During this visit, the masked menace gestured to the camera, offering a simple thumbs up, mocking anyone who watched the footage. The next morning, the household was again greeted by another black box that was delivered to their doorstep. This was clearly following the same pattern as in the visits before. As with the earlier deliveries, the contents of the package were never revealed. One thing, though, became clear. The unsettling nature of whatever was inside required the aid of the authorities, and the homeowner made a panicked call to the police. Despite the strange occurrences capturing the attention of the Sussex police, they were still left in the dark regarding the motives behind the night visits and the packages themselves. A spokesman later announced that each report of the Spider-Man stalker was being followed up on and fully investigated. They released the doorbell camera footage in hopes that someone knew something and to keep a timeline of the movements on the elusive entity in an operation they dubbed Operation Cursor. Despite the ongoing investigations into this odd occurrence, many questions still linger. What happened during the 20-year gap? Why was this household the target? And what lies in the packages left by the menace? Locals have been left grappling with fear as the police urge anyone to come forward with information regarding these events. But for now, as the investigation unfolds, Hailsham has been left in suspense. Number 1. 40-year-old Katherine Janess was living with her partner Emma Clark in 2021. The couple, along with their beloved dog Bowie, resided in an apartment in Atlanta, Georgia. They shared a love of life and adventures and were seen as the perfect couple in the eyes of friends and family. By this time, Katherine and Emma had been dating for 7 years and had built a strong partnership. During this time, Katherine had been working as a bartender at a bustling Italian restaurant on Piedmont Avenue. Beyond this job, Katherine was bright and friendly. She was an avid reader and had recently taken up guitar. Music was a newfound passion, and she often wrote her own song lyrics. Those who knew Katherine described her as a beloved figure of the community, with a magnetic personality that drew people in. This is why her unfortunate homicide had come as a shock to all who knew her. On the evening of the 28th of July, 2021, Katherine stopped by Emma's workplace and offered to walk back home with her. But it was 10 p.m., and Emma wasn't ready to leave just yet. The couple agreed that Katherine would return later once her partner was ready to leave, and they'd venture home together. During this time, the woman ended up walking Bowie along 10th Street, a walk that was part of her routine. Katherine had expressed that she felt safe in the area and she didn't mind walking alone. On this evening, things would take a tragic turn in Piedmont Park. Just before 1 a.m. that morning, Emma was ready to leave and texted her partner. That message, though, went unanswered. Concerned, Emma tracked her partner's phone and discovered that she was just inside Piedmont Park, the entrance of 10th Street and Charles Allen Drive, but Katherine's location marker wasn't moving. Even more concerned, Emma headed to the area in search of her partner but found only horror. Katherine was deceased, and just 100 feet away was Bowie. The distraught partner called 911, who declared both individuals deceased at the scene. Katherine had met a particularly violent end that evening. She was struck with a sharpened blade several times until she was no longer alive. An investigation into the brutal homicide began almost immediately. It was found that the last known sighting of Katherine had come at about 12:07 that morning. A security camera had captured her walking Bowie across the Rainbow intersection. She'd been wearing a black shirt adorned with a colorful decal, blue jeans, shoes, and 2 black headbands. It had been assumed that Katherine and Bowie walked along 10th Street and toward the entrance of Piedmont Park, just half a mile away. Google Maps indicates that the distance would have taken just about 10 minutes to walk. The deceased was discovered within this entrance, which placed her time of homicide between 12:17 and 1 a.m. that morning. Unfortunately, what happened to Katherine and her dog was not captured in the footage, since the cameras in this specific area on the night were not in operation. The cameras had allegedly been turned off, but authorities didn't find this suspicious since they were outdated. The Atlanta Police Department, however, was able to obtain CCTV footage of the surrounding areas and released 4 different camera angles of footage captured that evening. None of the individuals seen in the footage are currently under suspicion, but they are considered witnesses in the open investigation. The department is working on reaching out to those seen here, hoping they can shed some light on the events that unfolded that evening. Police believe that even the smallest detail may be incredibly crucial in the case. If anyone does recognize the people seen in this footage or has any additional information that can help the police, they are asked to come forward. These witnesses may have seen Katherine that evening, or at least a potential suspect. During the woman's autopsy, it was revealed that she sustained more than 50 wounds to her torso, head, and arms, 15 of which were focused on her head. The most haunting part of the ordeal was the incised letters discovered on her torso. The letters F.A.T. were sliced into her body. Blunt force injuries also indicated that she'd been assaulted. Only an earbud, a $5 bill, and a cell phone were found on her person. As for Bowie, he'd suffered multiple wounds with indications that he'd tried to defend his family. Potential DNA may lie under his nails or in his mouth, prompting investigators to collect samples. A bite impression was also taken of his teeth. The Atlanta Police Department isn't alone in this investigation. They're being aided by the Federal Bureau of Investigation. There's a reward of $10,000 offered for any information that leads to solving the brutal homicide of Katherine Janess. With no clues, leads, or DNA, the case inevitably went cold. Speculation soon began to rise among agencies and those who heard of the homicide. Many wondered if Emma Clark was involved, but the timeline and the state of their happy relationship wouldn't make sense. Emma was ruled out as a suspect by the Atlanta Police Department. Emma, though, would later reveal something eerie. She'd been carrying a firearm around after she and Katherine received multiple threats. It wasn't disclosed what these threats were about or who they had come from. Police considered another possibility due to the intimacy and personal nature of the crime. They believed that the assailant may have been someone that Katherine was familiar with. The homicide itself was a bold move. It took place in the middle of a public park during a time in which many people were still active. To note that Katherine was out on a routine walk with Bowie on 10th Street, the assailant must have been close with the couple or familiar to some degree. An unfamiliar assailant had also been suspected. Police wondered if this was a robbery gone wrong. The case had potential for a hate crime and a random act, but still evidence was lacking. Homicide expert Paul Belly, who's with the International Homicide Investigations, knows the frustration that courses through family and the community as each day passes without answers. According to Belly, the first 48 hours are the most crucial, but he also believes that 2 years isn't enough time in cases such as these. The expert explained that most people don't realize that they're sitting on a crucial piece of information until much later on. Police just need the right person to call in with the right tip. Belly also commented on the lack of public information in this case. Not everything was being shared, and the Atlanta Police Department was being tight-lipped about the whole thing. According to the expert, this is the best thing for this investigation. Releasing too much information can be detrimental to arriving at a legitimate suspect. As far as 2022, police have not declared the homicide of Katherine Janess a cold case, but it does remain unsolved. The Atlanta Police Homicide Unit urges the community to assist in the efforts to bring the assailant to justice. Anonymity is assured for those who may be hesitant. All information on Crime Stoppers remains anonymous. Any information connected to the case can be directed to the Atlanta Police Homicide Unit or Crime Stoppers at 404-577-8477. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked this video, be sure to hit that like button. Also, don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell to keep up to date with all of our future uploads. But my name is Ty Knotts, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.